Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago takes the hot seat after the break. You're watching Dateline Philippines. President Arroyo has apologized to the nation for calling a COMELEC official during the canvassing of votes in the previous presidential election. The president says she takes full responsibility for her action. Here's the president's statement in full.
Mga minamahal kong kababayan, for the last several weeks, the issue of the tape recordings has spun out of control. Tonight, I want to set the record straight. You deserve an explanation from me because you're the people I was elected to serve. As you recall, the election canvassing process was unnecessarily slow, even after the election results were already in and the votes had been counted. I was anxious to protect my votes, and during that time, had conversations with many people, including a COMELEC official. My intent was not to influence the outcome of the election, and it did not. As I mentioned, the election had already been decided and the votes counted. And as you remember, the outcome had been predicted by every major public opinion poll and adjudged free, fair, and decisive by international election observers and our own NAMFREL. That said, let me tell you how I feel personally. I recognize that making any such call was a lapse in judgment. I am sorry. I also regret taking so long to speak before you on this matter. I take full responsibility for my actions, and to you and to all those good citizens who may have had their faith shaken by these events, I want to assure you that I have redoubled my efforts to serve the nation and earn your trust. Nagagambala ako. Maliwanag na may kakulangan sa wastong pagpapasya ang nangyaring pagtawag sa telepono. Pinagsisisihan ko ito ng lubos. Pinanagutan ko ng lubusan ang aking maginawa at humingi ako ng tawad sa inyo sa lahat ng mabutihing mamamayan na nabawasan ang tiwala dahil sa mga pangyayaring ito. Ibig kong tiyakin sa inyo na lalo pa akong magsisikap upang maglingkod sa bayan at matamo ang inyong tiwala. I took office with a mandate to carry out a plan for the nation. Since that time, I have focused on making the tough but necessary decisions to make up for years of economic neglect. We passed a comprehensive, fiscally responsible national budget, raised new and necessary revenues to invest in the people, and implemented new anti-corruption measures that have led to the highest collection of taxes in history. Nothing should stand in the way of this work or the next phase of my reform agenda, which includes new investment in education and social services with our new revenues, and an expansion of our successful anti-corruption and lifestyle checks. That's why I want to close this chapter and move on with the business of governing. I ask each and every one of you to join hands with me in a show of unity to help forge one Philippines where everyone is equal under the law and everybody has the opportunity to use their God-given talents to make a better life. Our nation is strong and getting stronger. The progress is steady, and I ask you to walk with me on this journey to rebuild our great nation. I remain your humble servant and promise you that I will fulfill my constitutional oath of office to serve the people to the best of my ability. God bless the Philippines.
Joining us in today's hot seat to share her reaction to the president's admission is Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago. Ma'am, always a pleasure to have you. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Well, that was the statement. Where do we go from here?
That was the theater of the confessional, so everybody should be feeling a little bleak today, particularly since I just finished watching the funeral ceremonies for Cardinal Sin. Somehow, a sense of a person's own mortality is able to provide some tranquility to a very convulsive situation.
Is this going to convulse some more? I mean, I know the president said last night that let's move on, but that's not likely to happen, is it?
She wishes.
Yeah.
That is her wish, but it's not going to be given to her.
What do you think will happen now, ma'am?
Well, from a legal standpoint, it would be nice if the president could say, since I've already admitted that it's my voice on the tape, and I admit that I talked to a COMELEC official, I waive any right accruing to me under the anti-wiretapping law to prosecute anybody, because the law punishes not only the person who knowingly possesses, but also the person who replays and the person who distributes the contents of the tape. So this raises an issue of how many people are going to get prosecuted if the Department of Justice were to enforce the law strictly. It would have to file, for example, a criminal complaint against a broadsheet that published a transcription just today. But all of this can be avoided if the president says, I have no fear. Go ahead and play the tapes and I will not prosecute. I waive my right, or in effect, I consent that I should have been wiretapped.
But there's the rub, as Shakespeare said, Senator. If you listen very carefully to what she said, and we just did, she never admitted that that was her voice on the tapes. She never said that that was a wiretap, and she never mentioned who she spoke to. In other words, all she said was, and I'm quoting here from the transcript which you very generously provided, I was anxious to protect my votes, and during that time had conversations with many people, including a COMELEC official. She never said, I'm the woman on that tape. That was my voice on the tape. I was talking to Garciliano. In other words, based on what she said last night, we still don't know if that is a legitimate tape or a wiretap or what.
Well, we can equivocate that way, but to me, even as a lawyer, that in effect was what she was saying. I don't think that she purposely evaded these categorical statements so that she couldn't be pinned down in a later litigation or any legal proceeding. I think that she meant to just skip over it and get to the gist of her speech, which for her was her continuation in office and her continued leadership of our country. So I don't think that it will really wash if somebody emphasizes that she made no explicit direct admission of ownership of the voice on the tape or of a conversation with a COMELEC official concerning certain operations in connection with the campaign process at that time. I think that she could be, even on the basis of her message last night, I think that she could be, in effect, convicted if there were a proper crime charged against her in court, even on that skimpy basis. But the tape itself, in its transcribed form, since I have not listened personally to the tape, I prefer to wait for an official version or a version that is provided in a judicial environment. The transcription that was published in a broadsheet today seems to be ambivalent. You can interpret it either way. There are two issues involved here. The first issue is, when did this conversation between the president and a COMELEC official take place? Did it take place after the voting had been finished and the results had already been announced, or did it take place before that? And then the second issue is, what was she asking the COMELEC official to do? Was she asking the COMELEC official to just protect her votes, or was she asking the official to add to her votes? So I think that public reaction after her statement last night will depend on how the individual viewer or listener interprets these two issues. Well, since the transcription is ambivalent, you can't really pin her down on the basis of the transcription. In the first place, the tape appears to have been garbled, so there are so many passages that says unintelligible and intelligible.
I'm sorry, I hope I'm not annoying you, but my point that I was trying to make was that because she never said that that tape was me, and she simply said she talked to a COMELEC official, she still has the ability to say, based on her message, that yes, I spoke to a COMELEC official, but that still wasn't me on the tape, and that didn't happen. Theoretically, as a lawyer, there is a distinction to be made by her statement and her failure to admit that
That is correct. But I was a judge, and if I were a judge, I'd say that's hair splitting.
Okay, so as far as you're concerned, that confession of the president last night was tantamount to a confession that it was her on the tape.
Right.
Okay. She also said, she said that it was improper and it was a lapse of judgment, but she also seemed to be implying that there was nothing illegal about calling up a COMELEC commissioner and having the conversations, the Hello Garci conversations at the time. Do you agree with that?
Well, you see, we'll have to judge this by the language of the law. She could be held liable under one of three applicable legislations. The first is the Constitution itself. It provides that a sitting president can be impeached on the ground of culpable violation of the Constitution, meaning to say a major provision of the Constitution has been violated, not just a trivial provision. Treason, bribery, graft and corruption, other high crimes, and betrayal of public trust. Betrayal of public trust is a catch-all term, as we all know. And so the question really is, was it a betrayal of public trust for the president to talk to a COMELEC commissioner? But in
the manner that she did.
That's right, in the manner that she did. But now, as I said, since the transcription is ambivalent, what was she talking about? Was she talking about adding to her votes, Operation Dagdag? Or was she talking about just protecting her votes? Allow me to read to you from this published transcript, female. So, will I still lead by more than 1 million overall? Male, mga, unintelligible phrase. Advantage, ma'am, parang ganun din ang lalabas. Female, it will not be less than 1 million. Male, pipilitin ho natin yan, pero as of the other day, 982. So, was she asking for protection of her votes, or was she asking the COMELEC official to falsify public documents and add to her votes? There seems to be no categorical interpretation that can be made. So, the opposition will say she was committing a crime, and the administration, of course, will say she was making an innocuous request.
Regardless of what she said, is it a violation of the independence of the COMELEC? It's a constitutionally independent body for her to be having those conversations related to the elections? Or do you believe that...
Under the Anti-Graft Act, she is guilty of a crime if she was trying to induce an officer to do an illegal act. That's why we have to know what was she trying to induce the COMELEC official to do.
Yeah.
And then, finally, one of the last three pieces of applicable major legislation is the election code, which defines a criminal offense called coercion of election official as an act of coercing or threatening or intimidating or otherwise terrorizing an election official to do a certain action. So all of these questions must first be answered before we can say whether or not she admitted to a criminal offense last night.
What is your opinion at this point? I know it's early stages. I know also that you have not read the entire transcript, but based on the knowledge that you have right now, admittedly you will want more before you can make a definitive opinion.
Yes.
But at this early stage, what is your opinion? Did she...
Oh, that's easy to answer. Lawyers are taught that in a criminal proceeding, if there is any doubt, the doubt must be resolved in favor of the accused. So you'll notice, you remember, that even before the criminal proceeding has started in court, the judge is required to presume that the accused is innocent of the charge. Everything in law points in the direction of resolving all major doubts in favor of the innocence of the accused. So I'll just simply presume that the president is innocent, and I will need more evidence extraneous to this transcript, which I have already characterized as ambivalent, before I can really make up my mind on whether this is incriminating or not.
Let me read to you the provision in the election code that you cited. Coercion of election officials and employees, Article 22, Section 261. Any person who directly or indirectly threatens, intimidates, terrorizes, or coerces any election official or employee in the performance of his election functions or duties. When the president purportedly had a conversation with Garci, whoever he is, saying that she was worried about Biazon making noise about having certain ballot boxes open. She said two things. First, hindi ba pwedeng i-delay yung proclamation? To which the person she was talking to said, indicated in the positive. And then there was a statement also saying, pag pinabukas, to the effect that pinabukas ni Biazon yan, damay ang sa taas.
Yes.
Is that not a violation of the provision that I just read?
I have it here from my transcript that I clipped from a broadsheet. Female, si Biazon, nagbabanta. Kung madadaya raw siya, papabuksan daw niya yung at saka tawi-tawi, baka raw ako ang matalo doon.
Okay. Hindi man yung madama yung sa taas, baka ako ang matalo doon.
Baka ako ang matalo doon. And the male says, baka nga ho. So, in effect, this is an innocent exchange because the COMELEC commissioner is already telling her, I can't do anything. If you lose, that's it. But here we go to something I think that is substantial. Female, ang importante, hindi madamay yung sa taas.
Yes.
And then after a few more exchanges, female. So hindi maapektuhan yung sa taas. In effect, it seems to be our understanding as readers that the president is very concerned that the COMELEC commissioner must do something so that her own votes will not be affected. You can read it as saying, as in effect implying that the president is making a plea that her vote should be protected. Wag naman madamay ang sa itaas. And there is no basis for implying otherwise.
But if you take that conversation in the context of previous conversations that were had on the tapes in reference to the Biazon Barbers affair, you will have someone who supposedly sounds like First Gentleman Mike Arroyo saying, tulungan mo naman si Bobby Barbers, kaibigan natin yan. You had conversations with Senator Barbers and this so-called Garci, whoever he is, basically talking about money that was needed to be spread out. Aren't those improper? And in the context of those conversations, isn't the president's statement there at least tantamount to knowledge of election fraud?
Well, if you put it that way, you would be correct. That is why it's very important that we must now play the tape. I strongly urge that the tape should now be played in the pending House of Representatives investigation and that it should be played in any other forum, particularly including the media, so that each and every Filipino voter can make up his or her own mind on how it should be interpreted. I don't think we should allow the legal experts to tell us what conclusions to draw from the tape. We should draw it by ourselves.
So you think at this point, Senator, that it's too early for anybody, whether pro or anti, to reach a conclusion until those tapes have been heard?
That's correct, because everything we would be saying would be based on what we would have been told through a mediator, whether it's a transcript published in the newspaper or something else. Notice that this is what the newspaper itself says are portions of the tape. It's very difficult sometimes to draw conclusions from portions of a whole, because then you would be taking it out of context, as you rightfully pointed out.
Would it be necessary for the president at this point to say categorically, yeah, that tape is me?
Yes, you should have, but every person has his own way of communicating. If I were in that place last night, I would have said, yeah, that's me on the tape. Mea culpa.
Senator, don't do that. Let's take some comments and questions from our viewers, ma'am. Jonah of Quezon City. Now that the president has admitted she talked to the COMELEC official, can the tape still be used? Shouldn't the focus be now more on who wiretapped her?
That's an administration question. Well, in any event, it's like this. We should not stop all proceedings in the Congress, in the House, which is now ongoing, and in the Senate, which is prospective, on whether it is the president who is on the tape. Insofar as I'm concerned, she has already made the admission. Now, however, her admission last night is not a waiver of her right to raise the point that under existing law, no wiretap can be used for any purpose in any proceeding, including a legislative hearing, and of course including a judicial hearing in a court of justice. That was explained by our Supreme Court in a 2001 case, a relatively new case as lawyers go. So how can you use this tape, for example, in an impeachment complaint? The president can simply, or through her allies, can simply raise the point, you can't use that, according to the Supreme Court.
But she hasn't admitted to the wiretap.
But she has admitted that it was her conversation that now appears on a tape, so therefore was illegally wiretapped because she did not consent and there was no court order when it was performed.